the show today from the man who was Prime Minister. Yesterday, a painful day as David Cameron appeared in front of a panel of MPs. But I'm asking you, who experienced the most pain, him or possibly people as they watched it and saw him squirm on the hook of certain questions? Full details on that to the man who is Prime Minister Boris Johnson speaking yesterday. His concerns over the new Indian strain of COVID.
It is a present concern. We are anxious about it. It has been spreading. At the moment, there's a very wide range of scientific opinion about what could happen.
Anxious about that.
here, and Hamas militants have fired more rockets over the border. Indoor hospitality and entertainment venues in Wales will reopen on Monday. The weather cloudy with showers for many, a high of 15 degrees.
LBC travel line to our web, very slow northbound to the Blackwall Tunnel. It's slow all the way back to the Sun in the Sands. It's mainly because the Woolwich ferry can't run today because of a strike, so traffic's using the tunnel instead. Also on the road, some queues on the North Circular Road westbound to Palmer's Green. On the underground, severe delays on the South Line anti-clockwise. And on the train to Great Western Railway and London North Eastern Railway have lots of cancellations across their entire network again this morning, especially on their long-distance high-speed route. It's because of the ongoing safety checks.
This is LBC.
For many of us, future plans don't come much bigger than moving home. That's why at the Halifax, we want to make sure nothing gets in your way. So if you're unable to visit us in branch for a mortgage appointment face-to-face, we're more than happy to come to you. Every week, our colleagues are doing over 3,000 mortgage appointments by phone and video call, so we can keep your moving plans moving along. Halifax, it's a people thing.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973 LBC. In a world that's full of uncertainty, there's one thing you can always rely on. If your Mini needs a helping hand to get back to its best, your local Mini Centre is here to help. Now with 20% off selected services when you book online. Ensure any repairs are carried out using genuine Mini parts that come with a 2-year warranty. And rest assured we follow the latest government guidelines on sanitisation. You can be certain that your Mini is ready for the road ahead. Search Mini Service to book at your local Mini Centre today. T's and C's apply. Participating retailers only. Offer for online pre-booked and listed services completed before 18th of June. Not applicable for bookings made by mobile app. Offer may be withdrawn at any time.
This is the sound of electrician Claire bossing her expenses with Sage. Snap your receipts on the go. Bossing. Get 3 months free, then from £12 at sage.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Everyone can now get free rapid COVID-19 tests twice a week. They show your results within 30 minutes. They also show you're doing what you can to protect your loved ones, your friends, your workmates, and that you want to keep life moving again. Around 1 in 3 people who have COVID-19 have no symptoms and are spreading it without knowing. That could be a friend, a relative, a workmate. It could even be you. Rapid tests are easy to get from nhs.uk/get tested. Let's take this next step safely.
They say the more you put in, the more you get out. But while it's true of learning how to play the saxophone, it's not true of the all-new Hyundai i20. Advanced safety features, great new design, and it's a mild hybrid. But thanks to the £1,500 deposit contribution, this time when you put less in, you get more out. The all-new Hyundai i20. Ready to impress. 4.8% APR represented. Offer ends 13th of June. T's and C's apply. Guarantee may be required. Hyundai Finance.
Find the credit card you'll be looking for. Quick check won't affect your score. See if it's a yes. No need to guess with an Ocean credit card.
With a credit limit up to £1,500. Check if you're eligible for an Ocean credit card. It only takes a minute. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One the exclusive lender. Representative 39.9% APR variable. No annual fee. Get a credit limit of up to £1,500. Visit ocean.co.uk.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Okay, what did you learn from David Cameron? Alex, you'll be the first caller on that front. Quickly, the front page of the newspapers so that they help set the news agenda for the day. A lot obviously about the vaccines. Jabs blitz to save the summer is the front page of the Daily Mirror. Race to stop the Indian strain is the Times. I remind you the Vaccines Minister later in this hour. Vaccine surge for under 30s possible in new hotspots. Those hotspots are, well, unsurprisingly, given the size of it, London, also Bolton, Blackburn, Glasgow, Sefton and Bedford. Pages, I had to say that yet again Prince Harry, of course he's got every right to say what he likes when he likes, but he's going to get, I think, rather unfavourable treatment again. He's told a podcast he must break the cycle of genetic pain and suffering passed on from his father and the Queen, which is perhaps not the best way to talk about a woman who's getting over the death of her husband or your grandfather. Just how low can Harry go as the male? The son, Dad passed his pain on to me. I will not do that to my kids. So those are the two biggest news it's a different health story. Climb down over NHS online and phone triage. This was the NHS backing down over plans to use online and telephone screening, because of course there was quite an outrage when that was suggested earlier this week. Alex in Watford, what did you learn about the former Prime Minister yesterday? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Give me 10 David Cameron and 1 Boris Johnson. He went to Parliament and threw himself on the altar of truth. And please remember, this man lost a child while he was Prime Minister.
Indeed.
Found the strength to carry on.
Indeed he did, absolutely. And notwithstanding the tremendous strength of character that showed, does it not look, well, let me use the words MP, that his reputation is in tatters? It's at best a little unseemly, isn't it, to be texting people in this fashion?
A young man made a wrong call. Everyone learns by their first mistake. Those who are without guilt pass the first stone.
Okay, well, fair enough, Alex. So he emerges, obviously you had a lot of time and respect for him. His reputation, I'm not saying this in a critical fashion, he emerges unscathed.
I would feel safe in his hands if he was Prime Minister today.
We can't say more than that. Thank you very much, Alex. There will be more comments concerning David Cameron. Just again, the other aspect to look at, and I'm not saying that I necessarily felt that much sympathy, but he left office at 50, which is a relatively young age. He's clearly an ambitious man, and that's fantastic. He wants to provide for his family, noting he endured that tragedy while he was in office. What is he meant to do? Just pick up, all right, fairly sizable checks for each speech, but so what should we do with a 50-year-old former Prime Minister? We'll come back to that in a moment. Now, as you know, much of this week has been taken up with our conversation about social care, or I have to say, regrettably, the man who is currently Prime Minister, I think it's fair to say, a broken or shelved promise about delivering on social care. Well, a report by the Health and Social Care Committee into government reforms of the NHS and social care is supportive of proposals subject to accountability mechanisms. What might that be all about? Should we turn to the chair of the relevant committee, and of course former Health Secretary and Conservative MP, obviously, Jeremy Hunt, who joins me now. Good to have you on, Mr. Hunt. So tell me exactly what do you mean by accountability mechanisms? Good morning to you.
Morning, Nick. Nice to see you. The problem with these big reorganisations that the NHS seems to have every few years is that they end up being very internally focused, and you get new structures, new organisations, new quangos, but is it actually improving the quality of care for patients? And that's what really matters. So what we're saying is, yes, we understand the logic behind these new reforms. They're called integrated care systems. Hopefully it will join up the care people receive. Social care is a massive gap, which we've been talking about. But if we're going to go ahead with this, let's make sure that they are assessed in a way that the public understand and we can see the quality of care going up. So I like the Ofsted system that the CQC do for hospitals, that Ofsted do for schools. I'd like something like that, and I'd like the public to know, is the quality of care in my area outstanding, good, requiring improvement, or poor? And then we can do something about it.
Can I pick up on that expression, the massive gap as regards social care? I was struck by a piece you wrote for one of the newspapers earlier this week. Mr. Hunt, it was named in the Daily Mail, in which you actually accepted part of the blame, which is quite rare for politicians, if you'll let me say that. You say, I share part of the responsibility for the lack of progress as regards the social care bill. Why was there that lack of progress? How do you react to still that lack of progress? And what sort of money are we talking about if we were to look at the Dilnot report? Mr. Hunt?
Well, it wasn't for lack of trying. I mean, I negotiated a 10-year plan for the NHS, which was an extra 20 billion a year for the NHS budget, and I wanted to do the same for the social care system at the same time, for a very simple reason, which is that I had 4 winter crises in a row, year after year. They were an absolute nightmare for the NHS, and they were a nightmare for me to deal with. And I concluded that in the end, you won't fix the problems in the NHS if you ignore the social care system, for the very simple reason that all that will happen is that the most vulnerable patients will just get exported from the social care system into our hospitals, and then doctors won't discharge them. They'll say, look, we're not sending you home unless you've got a decent care package, because it would be safe to do so. So you've got to look at both systems, and that's why I do think one of the big omissions from these proposed NHS reforms is reform for the social care system. How much will it cost? It's a lot of money in the longer term, probably about an extra 7 to 10 billion a year over the next 5 to 10 years. In the short term, it's not such a big increase, But that is because we have an aging population. We have many, many more older people. And we just got to be honest. Do we want to look after older people in this country with dignity and respect? Do we want that security for ourselves when we become older? If we're one of the unlucky people who gets dementia and has these very, very high costs? Or do we just want to let people sink or swim? And I think I know where people's hearts are.
How disappointed are you by, I think it was just 9 words concerning this policy in the Queen's speech earlier this week, Mr. Hunt?
I am really disappointed. I don't want to pretend otherwise, but I do think the Prime Minister's heart is in the right place. I haven't given up. I think he would really like to do something meaningful for social care. And I think the real battle is going to be in the autumn when we have the spending review. I mean, all these things, I'm afraid, do boil down to money. And that will be the moment of real choice.
Okay, you're a former Health Secretary, you're also Jeremy Hunter.